I knew the second we'd start
What?
this, you'd give me
You
like
start
a
laughing?
face like that. Yeah.
Well, I didn't do anything.
No, you didn't do anything. How's your day going?
No, that's all right. Kind of tired from work.
Yeah. BS bullshit today.
Yeah, I don't know. Nothing new really. Like nothing interesting, like or notable to talk about. I guess just people like sometimes are pretty like careless and just leave a huge mess, and then you're left like cleaning up this huge mess.
Yeah.
And then like throughout the day you try to maintain the store because it's like there's so many shoes out there, and you have to like make sure they're straight. Because when the next person opens the next day, like they're gonna feel like you screwed them if everything's like crooked. So you're always trying to maintain everything, but then like every 10 minutes the whole store gets flipped over and everything's flipped and turned and people are grabbing shit. So it almost feels like an impossible task to like get everything done.
Yeah.
So you end up just like waiting until like the last 20-30 minutes before the store closes and like deep like cleaning everything and then like kind of making sure like no one makes a huge mess. Like get on people and be like, oh, where'd you find this or whatever.
Do you ever vent to your mom about it? Because I was just at her store yesterday. She's the manager of her own store.
Yes, yeah.
And my parents and I walk in, and she's literally cleaning a mess the second we walk in, and we're like, oh, what happened? She was like, oh, some hamar, some hamar dropped like a milk thing or something.
Sure. Yeah.
And he just left.
Yeah.
Like he dropped it, he looked at the mess, and then walked out the door.
Yeah.
Didn't say anything.
She says some people will like bait her into like yelling at them. She'll be like, what are you accusing me because I'm like black or because I'm brown or because I'm what? Like
Dude.
they're trying to like they want to get her into trouble.
Yeah.
When she's just telling them like don't steal basically.
Yeah. Dude, the same thing. Sorry.
No, that's okay. Go ahead.
The same thing happened at Matt and I's work, where one of our employees was telling this woman, hey, you can't, photograph other people's children. We're going to have to ask you to put your phone away, which we do to everybody.
Yeah.
This individual happened to be black. And she goes, you're only saying this because I'm black. And I'll have you know, I'm a lawyer. And what you're doing isn't right. She goes to the front desk. She complains. I'm the supervisor that night. I get a call from the front desk. And this lady's telling me the whole story. She's like, oh, yeah, this woman's standing in front of me right now. So she wants us to, like, do something about it. Like, she's like, play along so I can just, like, so she knows that we're doing something about it. And, I actually can't remember how that situation got resolved. I pretty much just talked to the person who said to this woman, you need to put your phone away. I was just like, listen, you didn't do anything wrong. We do this for everybody. I think it was more so we were just trying to satisfy her, to make her feel like she was in the right. I guess the customer's always right. I don't know.
Sure.
But it's just weird. Like we've incentivized this as like a community.
Yeah.
Of like, yeah, you should always think in terms of your race and like people are doing stuff to you primarily because of your race.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying?
Yeah, I don't know.
It's weird, dude.
I always feel uncomfortable when people are teaching like kids that.
Yeah.
So there's like bugs everywhere.
Oh, there's like, yeah.
Like I always feel weird when people are telling their kids like, you're not gonna get X and Y and Z because of where you're from. I don't know. I'm kind of torn on it because I know that like sometimes racist people can get in the way of you getting something done, or maybe people can prevent you from getting a position because they don't like your kind of people and all this crazy shit.
Yeah.
So I get that exists. That being said, like, as someone who's not white and we're both not white, I don't think we should ever think that way because then we're just limiting ourselves. Whether other people want to limit us or not, that's like, up to chance. Hopefully no one does, but like we can't live thinking that everybody's going to because then we're just like, again, limiting our own potential and stuff.
Yeah. Sorry guys, a little bit of a shift in camera. Just checking the audio and stuff. We're new to this. We're alone. We don't have our tech guy with us. Anyways.
He's barely a tech guy.
Yeah, he doesn't. Yeah, this guy doesn't do anything anyways. Future Matt, we're roasting you.
Yeah. What were we talking about?
Yeah, we're just talking about how minorities, I guess, shouldn't, you said, limit themselves?
Yeah.
Is that what you're saying?
I think the struggle of like people getting in your way is a real thing for some people. I personally have never experienced it, but even if I did, I wouldn't want, and it's easier said than done, but it's best to not think that way. It's best to think that, I should work hard and I'll get what I need to get. Also, this feels weird. I'm going to take this off.
Work hard and you'll get the fruits of your labor kind of thing.
Yeah. I don't know. Yeah. A lot of people hate that sentiment and they think that it's like ignorant to say that you can just work hard and get whatever you want. It's like, no, there's roadblocks in the way for people of color. I don't know. I think sometimes there are, sometimes there's not. It depends on your situation. But in general, like, as someone who's technically a person of color or whatever, I don't like thinking that way. I like thinking that if I'm working hard and doing what I'm supposed to be doing, like, I will get what I want to get.
Yeah, that makes sense. I think the way you framed it, of like that mindset of people are going to be in my way or things are going to be in my way because of the color of my skin, is not a good default mindset, so to speak.
Sure.
Your default, like you said, should be, you know, I'm going to work hard, I'm going to do my best, and I can make it, in quotes, I guess, if I try.
Yeah. Everyone should believe in themselves and think that they can do whatever they want to do.
Yeah.
Like,
the alternative is just so self-destructive.
Oh, 100%.
You know what I'm saying?
I mean, I feel like a lot of people who think like that are still successful, because then they're like, everybody's in my way, like, I'm going to show them.
True.
So ultimately, I think a lot of people still find success that way. Yeah. If that's the way that helps you get forward, then go for it. But, like, I don't personally think it's the healthiest mindset to think that everybody's against you.
Yeah.
I don't think that's a good mindset to make. Like, how are you going to make relationships, like, get into a relationship and have a family and have good friends? Like, how are you going to, like, trust people if you think that everyone's kind of, like, not giving you the opportunities or not treating you equally?
And alternatively, if you only surround yourself with people of... That's the weirdest thing to me also, by the way.
Sure.
People who only look for people of color in quotes. The reason why I'm doing quotations is because people of color, as you know...
It's a very broad term.
It's a broad term that applies to everyone who's not white.
Sure, yeah.
So from us to the Philippines to South Africa, we're all in one category. So to seek people who are people of color... because you'll feel more comfortable in that environment, it's just, it doesn't make any sense to me.
Yeah.
We're talking about it could be such a diverse group of people.
Yeah.
Maybe all your people of color friends are from the same place. Maybe they're all Egyptian. But then again, like, because of the broad term, it's just a weird thing to aspire for. You know what I'm saying? And
beyond all of that, I just feel like it sounds kind of racist if you only want to surround yourself with a certain group of people. Yeah. That sounds pretty, like, prejudiced. Like, I don't want to surround myself by white people or X people or white people. Like, you're trying to specifically be with a certain group of people. That to me sounds like you're discriminating people. You're discriminating against people because of where they're from. Like, I would never be like, I'm only going to hang out with Egyptian people. I think they're superior, basically. I want to only hang out with those kind of people. Those are the best people for me. It's like, to me, I just want to hang out with people who I get along with and who we have good times with, regardless of where they're from. So... And I think that's the way everyone should think, and that we try to think, you know? Yeah,
that's true. What do you think of the word exotic?
What do I think about it? Like, what do I think when I hear it?
Yeah, let's say someone called you exotic. How would that make you feel? Let's say a white person was calling you exotic. A white girl who's hitting on you.
Like, what is she saying exactly?
You guys are talking, you introduce yourself.
Yeah.
You exchange names.
Sure.
And she asks you where you're from. You say Egypt, and she goes, oh, wow, you're really exotic.
I'd probably just chuckle and be like, yeah, I guess so. I don't know. And then I'd just probably move on.
Would you be flattered? Would you be like... Is it like... I guess what I'm trying to get at is...
If she's saying
your perception, is it positive or negative?
If she's saying it in a detectably flirtatious way, then yeah, I'd be flattered. But like if she was saying it in like a weirded out way, then I'd be weirded out. Yeah. It just depends on how she says it. Yeah. If she says it in like a flat way, like, oh, that's exotic, then I'd be like... I'd probably just chuckle and then think nothing of it, really. Yeah. Okay, because I was talking to these girls recently, and they were discussing a moment where one of them was at Queens. They were at Queens at a party, Queens University. Yeah. And some white guy, came up to her. She's from the Philippines. They're talking. It's the exact same scenario I just laid out to you. And he says to her, wow, you're so exotic, in a flirtatious, in an interested sort of way. Sure. But she was absolutely offended. She didn't like it at all. Like you're fetishizing.
You're fetishizing. That's the exact word that was used.
Everyone says the same word. Yeah. 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 It's I don't know. I don't know why you would take it that way. I feel like it's like kind of. It's like the same. I think about it the same way I think about like what people like call cultural appropriation and stuff. Where to me it's like if someone wants to participate in something that's like traditionally Egyptian or something, I'd be like, oh, that's cool. They really appreciate the culture. They like it. Whatever. They think it's cool. It seems to me like he's thinking the same thing of like, oh, that's cool that you're from a different place. Like, I'm into that. I don't see a world where you'd be like, oh, like that's messed up. Like, I don't like that. Unless he's like mocking your culture, or maybe some people think that calling you exotic is as a mockery. But I think you could tell by how they're saying it whether they're just being like a dick about it or if they're actually genuinely like interested by it. You know?
Yeah. And to that point, I do understand where she's coming from in the sense of if that truly was what he was doing, then yeah, it's like it would make me uncomfortable too of like someone who is especially interested in Egyptian people because they're like sexually attracted. Like, you know what I'm saying? Like it's like
objectifying kind of?
Objectifying almost. Thank you. That's the right word.
Yeah.
So in that case, yeah, I would be supportive of this person.
Yeah.
But she just doesn't know. You know what I'm saying?
Sure.
It's just like the blanket statement of exotic.
Sure.
That buzzword, if you will, that buzzword just is what got her, in my opinion at least. I don't know.
Yeah,
you know what I'm saying?
I've heard that before from many times.
Yeah.
Like I said, I wouldn't necessarily take it that way.
Yeah.
Maybe it's also different that a guy saying it to a girl. There's a different power dynamic there where she feels like it's like weird. I don't know.
Yeah.
I'm not sure.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I don't want to cut the flow of the conversation.
Sure.
Do you mind if I just do the little intro Matt likes to do?
Oh, sure.
Just so Matt knows how to edit this.
Sure. What's going on, everybody? Welcome back to Wildly Adequate. What episode are we on at this point?
I have no idea.
We're on an episode. We're on a double-digit episode, I think. We're not
We
quite
are.
double digits.
Double digit, yeah.
Yeah, this is the show where we talk about anything, everything, and usually nothing. Right now, it's just me and Patrick. Malcolm and Matty are on vacation. I think Matty's in Vegas, gambling his life away.
Yeah.
And Malcolm's in Florida for the 7th time this year.
Oh, God, dude.
Yeah.
Malcolm in Florida are like this?
Yes, that's right.
Oh,
yeah.
God.
So, yeah, it's just going to be us two. But
Do
yeah.
you think Matty is like going ham in the casino as we speak right now? There's a time difference.
How much is the difference?
I think it might be maybe 3 hours, 4 hours. He's on the other coast.
I think that he's gonna have a similar experience to what happened at the casino here in Canada.
Yeah.
Where he will get in there, and then if he immediately loses, he's gonna be very turned off of the experience and not want to go as hard.
True.
He'll kind of take it more conservative. But who knows? If he hits big, then he'll probably want to keep going.
Yeah. Dude, where can we find a table where we can play against other people in poker? I just don't like playing against the house. Is it like in poker specifically, like blackjack, you have to play against the house.
I think in big casinos, they probably have high roller tables that have a lot of people there.
But high roller as in big,
have big bets.
buy-ins.
Yeah. I don't think I doubt there's super cheap play against other people type stuff.
Nah.
I don't know.
Damn.
Or maybe it's just that the casino we went to isn't like that. Maybe there's bigger ones in Vegas that have that.
True.
Because you always see that in movies, right?
Right.
People playing against each other.
Right.
Well, actually, it doesn't.
Is it like a backroom thing though? Is that what we see in movies?
Maybe, but I don't think there's actually any way to realize whether they're playing against each other or the house. Because in movies, it's always just everyone's around the table, everyone's quiet, and then someone goes, "Oh, I win," and they take the money. But yeah, they're taking other people's money.
But they don't actually. They don't actually
specify.
See who they're facing. For all we know, it could be against the house too, but they just didn't show the shot.
They just got all the money. Yeah.
Yeah. That's true.
That's a weird thing where they kind of keep it vague like that.
Yeah.
So I've always assumed that you're taking other people's money.
Yeah.
Which you are, I guess. If you're playing against the house, you take other people's money.
So actually, no. If you're in poker, you're only playing against the house if the dealer's in.
So you only take their money.
Exactly.
You only double your money, basically.
Exactly. So the dealer goes to each individual person face to face.
So
if you lose against the house, he takes your chips.
So there's more to win in if you're playing against other people.
Yeah.
I think that's typically more of a backroom thing. I think that's hey, we're gonna agree to do this way, but sanctioned, or not sanctioned. It's all kind of loose anyway. But the official way they do it is I guess against the dealer.
Yeah.
Yeah. Dude, I feel like gambling is something that's so fun, and I want to do it at least once a year. Just I think everything in moderation is fine.
Yeah.
So it would be one of those things where I want to go on a guy's trip once a year just to gamble.
Yeah.
And also the older I get and the more money I save, the more comfortable I feel dropping a pretty penny here and there.
True.
Know?
I really don't want my parents to see this part of the episode.
Sure.
But gambling is so invigorating.
Yeah, it is.
It makes me feel so alive, dude.
Yeah. It's scary, but in a good way.
It's scary in a really good way.
It's like getting on a roller coaster or something.
Yeah.
I don't like roller coasters, but to me, it has that same excitement. It's the same excitement you when you're watching a horror movie and you're not sure what's gonna happen next, and yeah,
True.
I like it.
True.
Love it.
I watched Longlegs again the other day.
Yeah. How was it the second viewing?
It went by, and here's a good thing. This is a good comment.
Okay.
It went by fast in that I wasn't really
dragging along.
It wasn't dragging along. I didn't feel I'm rewatching the same thing and I'm like, I'm bored. I was just as engaged. I was trying to see if I could pick up things that I didn't notice the first time. There were a few silhouettes I didn't notice. And when spoiler alert, when Harker talks to the girl in the insane asylum,
yes,
she says a few things where it's like, oh, Harker asks her, do you remember a doll that's made of you? She goes, no, and neither do you. She says that to Harker, and it's like,
she doesn't remember her own doll.
She doesn't remember her own doll.
Yeah.
So it's little things like that. Nothing like major.
Sure. Just little nuggets here and there.
But it's like little nuggets here and there.
That's cool.
But yeah, still a great movie. I really wanted to watch Deadpool.
Yeah.
I was
Why
actually.
didn't you guys watch it? Why didn't you guys watch it?
A few of them watched it already.
Okay.
And in the theater, I was looking at Deadpool times. I was like, do I go watch
back
Deadpool by myself while they watch Long Legs?
I haven't seen it yet. Has Maddie seen it?
No, Maddie hasn't seen it. We should just watch it together.
Yeah, let's watch it.
Yeah. I heard good things about it.
Another thing I wanted to talk about at some point was, I don't know, you ever think about if you have like I feel like this happens in a group very often and never almost never individually.
Okay.
But you might have a group of people and like a couple of people are like teaming up in a way, if that makes sense. Like conversationally, they're just like on each other's side. Like they'll defend each other and they'll kind of like be like, they'll laugh extra hard at each other's jokes. Like two people might be like on the same, they'll be like connecting somehow.
Okay.
Whether it's friends who are just having a good like chemistry day, you know, just have really good chemistry that day or with a significant other or whatever.
Okay.
It's weird because I find that sometimes I'll be in a group like at work, for example, and we're all talking and like me and a coworker, for example, will be a part of the group and like we're just kind of like agreeing with each other a lot. We're like, yeah, I think they're right actually. And like we're just like meshing more. So I was thinking about this and how interesting it is that people will like would react one way one day and then a completely different way the other day, depending on how they're feeling and who they're meshing with.
True.
Like sometimes I'd say something and like, oh, that's not even that funny. That's not funny. But like the next day I would be like, oh, that's hilarious if we're like getting along really well or whatever it is.
Yeah.
So it's always interesting to me how
trippy as hell.
Yeah, it's weird. It's like it's like a psychological thing where it's just like, I notice it sometimes and I'm like, I just don't. It always feels bizarre to me that people are like changing how they're perceiving stuff.
Yeah. And it almost makes, when you say that, it makes me think there isn't just one version. Like, I'm not just me. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
Like, I'm me on, what day is it today? August 4th.
Yeah.
Like, this is the me of August 4th.
Sure.
Versus the me of August 4th last year. Two completely different people. We're not saying anything groundbreaking here, but it's just a weird realization.
Yeah, it is weird. It's weird. Like, sometimes I'll feel like I'll say something to someone and they'll like again be put off by it or not like it, and then another time I'll say something very similar and they love it. It's hilarious. It's very interesting how someone's mood can alter how they're perceiving something, and then they state it as if I would always not like that.
Yeah.
Do you know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
Like I'm not even thinking of anything in specific. I'm just thinking like in general, like even like with one of you guys, I might like say something and then you kind of like brush it off like whatever. Other days you'd be engaged with it. It's weird how like however you're feeling that day or however we're kind of connecting that day will alter the outcome of conversation.
That's right. It almost puts to perspective or makes the saying "you caught me at a bad time" or "you caught me on the wrong day" just ring true even more.
Yeah,
you know
and I also think that it should take pressure off your own shoulders so that you realize that someone didn't like something I said or someone isn't meshing with me right now. Then you should never feel bad because it's like 9 times out of 10 it's not something that you did. It's just that they're not in the right mood or they're not in the right headspace to be like joking around like that or talking about this conversation, like whatever it is. I don't know. I was just thinking about it. Like group dynamics like interest me sometimes. I almost like want to just sit back and like observe it as opposed to be a part of it. Just to be like how are people like changing how they're being right now. Yeah, it's weird. Like it'd just be like someone might comment on something you said, being like, "Oh, that was a weird thing to say," but it sounds like they don't even believe it themselves. They're just saying it because the group vibe is that was too weird to say or that was funny, even though it wasn't that funny. You know what I'm saying? You know when you're like get giggly with a friend and like you laugh at anything that they say? I think that's like the positive version of what we're just talking about. Yeah. Where like you might say something that on 9 times out of 10 like I would never laugh at, but like this one day that we're just like really having a good time together and we're giggly, and I'll just like think it's fucking hilarious. Yeah. And then you'll like think back and like remember when that thing happened? That was the funniest shit that's ever happened to me. But again, 90% of the other days, if that happened on a different day, you would have never remembered that story or thought it was like memorable enough to like keep bringing up again.
Yeah.
It's weird. Like, and sometimes you might have a disconnect. You might have like a friend who thinks something happened was like insanely funny. You don't think it's funny, but because you like them and you want to be like, you don't want to like be like a Debbie Downer type shit. You might like laugh along with them, be like, yeah, that was great. And then when they bring it up all the time, and they're like, remember when that happened? You're like, yeah. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
I don't know. It's weird.
I hear that.
Yeah.
You know what? I was something I wanted to actually bring up as well, not related to this.
Sure. Yeah.
I'll be honest with you. You know what really pisses me off? So whether you're in Canada, England, Australia,
sure,
the United States of America,
English-speaking countries,
no matter where you're at, you will understand 99% of what's being said.
Yeah.
There's so many common words, everything feels common, you know what I'm saying? Except maybe some slang here and there.
Sure.
Or how we say it.
Some expressions and stuff.
But in the Middle East, that's not even a little bit true.
Okay.
Like between Egypt, Saudi and the Gulf states,
Lebanon or whatever,
and Lebanon and Syria, Iraq, it's just like such. I feel like it's just such different dialects, and it makes me upset. Of like,
you can't understand it.
I can't understand people from Iraq, for example, that well. Like 99% or 90% of the words they say, it's just gonna go over my head. Yeah. And I even tested with my parents, who are like way more fluent than me. Obviously, they grew up in Egypt, and that's their first language. That's what they're comfortable with. I showed them a song that a buddy of mine put me onto. Yeah. It's a song by this Saudi rapper. I'm like, okay, listen to this and tell me what you understand. And my mom's just sitting there in amazement. She can't understand a thing. She can, like, if she listens really hard, she'll get a word here and there.
Is it part of it that he's going really fast, though, or is it like...
He's going pretty slow, to be quite honest. Okay. He's going in a slower than usual for rap pace, where it's like, it's almost like talking, like 21 Savage.
Like Kendrick type stuff.
Or like Kendrick type
stuff. It's not
like... Exactly. It's really manageable. So...
Yeah. It's interesting. I don't know, dude. My assistant manager is Iraqi, and she, like... I'll hear her speaking on the phone, and I'm like, I'm not getting most of that. Obviously, I'm not trying to eavesdrop, but like I'll be walking by and I'm like, wait, I have no idea what she's saying. Yeah. But then when she speaks to me, she
switches her dialect, doesn't she?
A little bit, but like not completely. She still says like I know like Egyptian people will say like gibna for a cheese, and she'll say jibna. Yeah. So she'll still keep like stuff that's native to Iraqi people. Yeah. But like she'll kind of like talk more Egyptian for me. Yeah. And then I understand everything she's saying, and she understands. It's interesting because she understands my Egyptian Arabic completely fine. Yeah. You know what I think it is? I think that Egyptian Arabic, from what I've learned, is that, and this is kind of a boring thing to discuss, I guess, but like to me, Egyptian Arabic, what I've heard is it's very like informal and slangy, and it's not like proper Arabic or whatever. Yeah. So she kind of, the way she describes it is like Iraqi and like a lot of other countries, like they have very strict formal Arabic. Like you speak it, again, very formal. Yeah. So it's hard for people who speak informally to understand the formal, but for people who are formal, they're kind of more advanced in the language and the intricacies of it, so they can understand some slang.
That's completely true. Yeah. And it pisses me off, dude.
That we're not like the top tier.
It literally pisses me off because I want to be able to understand everybody. Sure. Like, you know how or that's not the word I'm looking for. Frustrated? It just makes me frustrated when you meet someone who's like from Syria and they're like, oh, like another Arabic person, but then you can only speak Egyptian Arabic, and it's like, that's not necessarily the problem. It's that you can't really comprehend or understand exactly their form of Arabic, but they can understand you perfectly fine.
I feel like for me, it's like, what's frustrating for me is that my like limited vocabulary. Because some people come into the store and they'll be like, well, بتحكي عربي, and then I'm like, شوية بس مش بعرف كتير يعني. Yeah. A couple words here and there or whatever. Like I can carry a very light conversation. Yeah. I feel like I can understand generally. I think that if people are talking to their friends or other people from their same region, it's harder to understand if you were someone listening in. But if someone from Syria or something is talking to you directly, you'd probably understand most of the stuff they're saying, because either they'd slow it down or they might alter their dialect a little bit, because they just do it automatically, just like how my assistant manager does it. She's like, he's not going to understand if I just babble like quick in Iraqi.
You're saying
Arabic.
If they clock, I'm speaking to an Egyptian person, it's like they're going to speak a certain way.
Yes. If they think you're from where they're from, then they'll probably talk like really quick and with like heavy formalities or whatever they're doing from where they're from. Yeah.
This is true. Yeah. But just something that frustrated me recently. I've been hanging out more recently with Mustafa a lot. Yeah.
Yeah.
And
me and Malcolm just like make fun of it sometimes.
you guys just make fun of it sometimes. Like, why is he spending so much time?
I'll call Patrick. I'll call Malcolm and be like, "Oh, like we'll see what Patrick's up to." He's like, "That's probably fucking stuff."
Oh god, yeah, but
it's weird.
God.
Like I feel like it's good to have like a variety of like friend circles and stuff and friend groups. So it's good that you have like Tawfiq and all those guys and Mustafa.
Yeah.
And also I feel like, you know, obviously you're moving away soon. You're gonna have like different groups as well. Yeah, I don't know. How do you feel about the idea of like, I've told people that, you know, oh, like you're gonna move away and whatever, and we've had conversations about how the group dynamics is gonna be and stuff like that. And I remember mentioning it to someone like, yeah, things are just gonna be different, and they're like, no, they're not. And I was like, what do you mean?
Who said they're not gonna be different?
I don't remember. Someone at work maybe, or I don't remember. But they were saying like, oh, it's not gonna be different because like, once you're like almost like best friends with a group of people, like you like no matter how long you might not talk to each other, when you do talk to each other, it's going to feel like no time has passed. There is that belief. Like, what do you think about that? Do you think that's true, or do you think that depends on the person? Because I don't know if it's like that.
Okay. I'm just going to say one small thing. Probably shouldn't cover your face just because of the angle.
Sure, yeah.
I think what they're saying is true because of my experience with Adriano specifically.
Sure.
Where whenever he comes back, it's literally just back to normal. You know, maybe it gets to a point where so much time has passed, because it's usually like about a year in between.
Sure.
You know what I'm saying?
If like maybe 5 years pass.
Yeah, maybe it gets to a point where it's 5 years, 6 years.
Different person.
And it's just, so much change has happened in that time that
it's kind of scary,
not
isn't
the
it?
same.
Like the idea of like how quick human beings change is kind of crazy. A lot of people think that human beings don't change at all. Like you'll never change. Like you are who you are.
Yeah.
But for me personally, I feel like I'm always changing, and like who I was a couple of years ago, I'm like, damn, like I knew so little as compared to now, and I've changed perspectives on so many things, and I've gained so many experiences. Like it's cool and it's exciting, but it's also scary to think like, oh, in a few years from now, I'm gonna be a completely different person, or like vastly different person.
Yeah.
In some ways, I guess, you know.
Yeah, I was actually looking out the window. I don't mean to get too deep here, but
look at the window.
No, last night I was looking out the window. Matt was driving us home from the theater. And I was just thinking about how just the passage of time. That's what I was thinking about.
Yeah.
And how, like you said, we're all changing really quickly.
Yeah.
Or it seems like we're changing really quickly, and so many things in our lives are changing. I think it's the positioning of our lives right now, because we're in the sweet spot of all this change. You know what I'm saying?
Like right on the outskirts of it. You're saying
right on the outskirts going into it.
Yes.
You know what I'm saying?
Yeah. Like things are about to change.
Things are about to like flip upside down.
Yeah.
And I was just thinking about how, like, am I really
ready?
Not ready. I was thinking, am I really appreciating every moment right now? I was just thinking about you guys. I was thinking about my family, and contrasting that with all the times that I spend on my phone, just like not experiencing life. I'm just experiencing the screen.
Bro, I was about to say the same shit.
You know what I'm saying?
I was thinking like, it honestly genuinely bothers me, and that's why I've been calling it out more. And I do the same thing. I'm guilty of the same thing.
Yeah.
But like when we went to the cottage, for example, like there'd be times where we're all hanging out, and like, for example, like someone's on their phone a lot, and I'm like, dude, like we're hanging out. It's a cottage. We do this like once every couple of years. Let's just talk with each other and hang out and laugh and whatever. It just feels like it's like this fucking like disease that we all have, and like we all can't shake it. Like we live with it and it's fine, but like we just can't help but looking. Yeah. And I don't like having this sort of conversation, because I find it to be like very like I don't know if not corny is the right word, but like cliche to be like, oh, those damn phones, they're ruining everything. But like I genuinely do believe like things would be way better without them. And I just wish I could experience like genuine moments more often. But now I feel like people will, and rudely so, I feel like, prioritize media and being on their phone even when in the presence of people that they don't see all the time, or even if people they do see all the time. Like I was hanging out with my mom the other day. She came home from work and she was in her room, and like she was just chilling in her room on the iPad. And I just came into her room and I just like laid on the bed and was chatting with her or whatever. And for a while I felt like I was just chatting at her. And then I was like how come we barely talk? Like she's like, what do you mean? We talk all the time. And I'm like, yeah, but like there's always like, oh, like you're on the phone or on the iPad, I'm on my phone on my app. Like why don't we just like both put our shit away and then just like look at each other and talk? And then so she was like, okay, so we did that. We talked for like an hour just about like our family history and like reflecting on things and how things have gone and how like we've been raised, me and my brother, and kind of talking about how it differed from how they were raised and how I told my mom like not in a non-judgy way. I was like, you know, there are certain things when I grow up and I think, oh, like I wouldn't do that, or I would do that to my kids and whatever. Like, for example, like her parents, like sometimes they'd be like aggressive and like they'd hit them every once in a while, or they would like yell at them a lot, and they didn't want to do that, so they did that less with me and my brother. And it's interesting to see for their perspective, like how that altered the outcome of their kids. Like, were their kids more like shitty, or were they like better people, or whatever? So we were just kind of talking about that a lot, and it was a nice conversation. And I wish I had conversations like that more. And I just think it's a shame that someone has to like prompt the put away of everything. Like, if I didn't tell her, hey, like, why don't we just put everything away, we would have just like sat and like spoken a word here or there and then back to the phone.
Yeah.
And it just really bothers me. Like, I want to genuinely connect with people. Like, talking is one of my favorite things to do, so it sucks that we don't get to do that. And that's one of the nicest things about the podcast, is that we get to just genuinely like talk to each other.
Yeah. And to that point, just being in a house, I've got my mom, my dad, my brother.
Yeah.
So I've got 3 other people in the house.
Mm-hmm.
And it's exactly that, where it has to be a prompt to talk. But otherwise, everyone's in their corner.
Mm-hmm.
Everyone's on. How scary is that? That time is passing by. And what scared me recently was the thought that I might not actually know my mom. I might not actually know my dad. Maybe I don't know my brother.
Like really well.
Really know them. You know what I'm saying? Because I'm just, every time I'm home, I'm sitting on my screen. They're sitting on their screens. I'm not trying to blame anyone. It's just what it is.
Yeah, yeah. Everybody does it.
So
I want to also be very careful not to be like, oh, on my high horse, like explaining why it's like why I understand it and no one else does. Like, we all understand it and we all do it. Like, everyone can, almost very few people will be like, oh no, like the phones are fine and like I have no problem with it and everyone should just be on their phone all the time. Like, everybody can recognize that it's potentially problematic. But
that's right. And something else that scares me is, aside from the knowing, the experiencing. Like, what am I going to think back to in memory of my family, for example? Like, I have a lot of memories when I was a kid before I had a phone, and, you know, when you had the innocence of childhood, I have a lot of memories with my mom and my dad, my brother. But I'm thinking on the like my teens. Yeah. There's not as many.
It gets blurry.
It gets a little blurry. And is it because of like the whole, like my phone? Is it because I'm distracted, I'm not making experiences, or is it because
I don't think
there's so many memories that it's blurry?
I think that mainly it's like the kind of like the trajectory that life takes, where kids will like love hanging out with their parents, and then you become a teenager and you just want to be with your friends all the time, and like I don't want to hang out with my parents. No, that's boring. And that happens for a long time. For most people, it's like, you know, you're all of high school essentially. You don't really want to chill with your parents a lot. Maybe when you get into university or you like start working full time or whatever it is, then you start appreciating them more and want to hang out with them more. But then by that point, most people are like getting into their full time careers, maybe moving out or getting married. So it's a shame. A lot of people don't get to experience that. Like, I'm an adult and I like chilling with my parents now. Yeah. Like, you only get to experience that when you're like, when you have your own family and you understand how it feels to be a parent. So I think that the phones aren't necessarily to blame completely for that. But I definitely do think that if they weren't there, you might think about consciously talking to them more.
Yeah, that's a good point.
And also I think that a part of it is like the language barrier too. I don't think about it often. Yeah. When I talk to my parents, I don't feel like, oh, their English is not good. But like, for example, like my mom was at the mall like applying for a job, right? And she like came into our store and she was talking with me and my 2 managers, my assistant manager and manager. And like, as she was like, they were asking her about how the interview went, whatever. And as she was replying, it struck me how different her English was compared to theirs. Because when I'm at home, I don't notice it. But like, she started talking and I was like, oh man, her English is like way worse than I thought. And not in a mean way. Just like, it's not nearly as developed as I thought it was at home. If you asked me how good my English is, my mom's English is or my dad's English is, I'd be like, really good. But then like when she was talking to them, I was like, oh, it's actually pretty limited. Like, she's repeating a lot of the same words. She doesn't know what to say. Yeah. Again, that's not any slight on her. That's just like the way it is. That's kind of like a side note, but
I think the most ideal circumstance for my parents and I is when they're speaking Arabic and I'm speaking English. Yeah. Because I can understand at a higher level than I can speak.
Sure. Yes.
And they can communicate to me at a higher level. Yeah. And then they can also understand my higher level of speaking in English
That's
because they've lived here for so long.
That was a conversation I had with my mom yesterday. It was she'd say a couple words in English because she would be afraid that I'm not understanding her.
Yeah.
But I'd tell her like, yeah, whatever, say whatever you want to say. Or she would think I'm not understanding, and then she'd be like, that what I just said means whatever. I'm like, no, I get it. Like, keep going. Because even if you don't understand a word or two, like the context around it just like flushes it out to where you like it's everything makes sense.
Yeah.
Even if a specific word doesn't make sense, like around it makes sense.
Exactly. Yeah.
But I think a part of missing out and not experiencing the present moment for me with my parents, for example, a part of it is the language thing. And also, it's a weird conversation to have because I don't want to like feel like I'm pointing fingers or blaming, you know. But I feel like my parents aren't the most like talkative type people, and I think that again, maybe if they were like born and raised speaking English like me, then they would be more inclined to just like have random chats with me. I think if they had Arabic friends that lived close by, they'd be like chatting all the time, like 24/7. They'd be want to chat and whatever. Yeah. But because they don't, the vocabulary isn't so robust in English for them, they feel like they don't know how to. They can't really keep up with me in a conversation, and I can't really keep up with them in a conversation in Arabic. Yeah. So it's almost like a disconnect where I feel like I can't quite have like a really deep conversational connection with them. Although yesterday I kind of tested it out. Sometimes I get afraid that my English is too fast or too kind of like sporadic, or I don't know, just kind of like when I go to Egypt, I'll talk to people, my family there, and I kind of try to dumb it down as much as possible and very slow, and I'll take out longer words and whatever, just subconsciously. I don't even consciously do it. I just think that maybe they'll understand me if I slow it down. Yeah. But I find that with my parents, they'll understand me if I speak normally. Yeah. Like I'm speaking to you right now. It feels a little bit uncomfortable, I'm not going to lie. Sometimes I almost add a bit of an accent to it, or again, dumb it down a little bit because I feel like I just feel weird. I don't know why. I just feel weird talking to them like I talk to you. Yeah. I don't know. Do you feel the same way? Do you feel like, because something I've noticed about you is that you'll talk to your parents when I'm at your house, for example, the same way you would talk to me. Yeah. I do that. And so when I was talking to my mom yesterday, I tried to do that, and I liked it, and it felt good, and she was able to respond normally. It didn't seem like she was confused at all. Yeah. So I think I'm like putting up a mental barrier in front of myself that doesn't exist. Like they could be fine to understand me, type thing. True. Yeah. True. Yeah, I don't know.
I'm gonna switch us a little bit.
Sure.
Switch the conversation a little bit. I know we talked about this already a little bit. Okay, so there's a few temperaments. This might not make sense depending on how he cuts it, but that's his issue. So there's a few temperaments of girls that I've been sort of observing, I guess.
Sure.
So the two people we met most recently, there's like a more like tame, I guess, but then there's more like outgoing.
Yeah, so there's the way I think about it, and I know exactly what you're talking about, is like someone who's very much a go-getter, ambitious, driven, but the other side of that coin is kind of like
brazen,
blunt, like passionate about stuff.
Yeah.
The other side is kind of like fun-loving, open, easygoing, carefree.
Yeah.
Kind of like ignorance is bliss type situation.
Yeah,
just like whatever.
Yeah.
Like those are two different archetypes that exist for sure, and there are many more, but those are two that we've
interacted with, and they're like, I guess, opposing each other, right?
Yeah, sure.
So I was thinking, like, what kind of girl would I want to be with?
Yes.
Like, is it? Because here's the thing. You named good things and like drawbacks to both personalities.
Yes.
I think ultimately I'd want the more brazen one though.
Yes.
You know what I'm saying?
I think it's more attractive to talk to someone who like knows what they want.
Yeah.
I think that there are some things that make you roll your eyes about that kind of personality, and you're like, oh, get off of it. Like you're being so over or extra or whatever.
Yeah.
I don't know why I said that. Yeah, sorry. I was gonna say like a lot of when I go back to Egypt sometimes, like instead of extra, they'll be like you're being over.
Yeah.
You know that?
Yeah.
Like I'll be hanging out with my cousins, and she'll be like, "Hey, she's so over."
Yeah, that's the word.
She'll say it in an English accent.
Yeah.
Like, she's so over, and I'm like, "Damn, like does that mean extra?"
Yeah.
Like she's kind of saying like, "Oh, this person is like doing too much."
Yeah, exactly.
Anyway, sorry. Go ahead.
Anyways, yeah, I was gonna say, what was I gonna say? there's this word. So in the two personality types we just described,
Yeah.
there's this idea of submissiveness.
Yeah.
There are guys who like really submissive girls.
Yes.
Can we just break down what that means real quick? Like, what does it
What
mean?
What does it mean to be a submissive
to
girl?
be submissive as a girl in that modern context of using the word?
Well, do you wanna take it, or do you want me to?
I would like you to enlighten. Like,
So, like,
I think I know, but like I want to hear from you.
What does it mean to be submissive in today's context?
In today's context, a guy wanting a submissive girl.
I think that means someone who doesn't continually oppose your points and your opinions.
Yeah.
Someone who's like open and kind of like, oh yeah, I could see your point there, and just not argumentative. Someone who's like, I think there's another temperamental thing where it's like being just like trait openness is one of them.
Agreeableness is
one
on.
yeah, that's the one.
Yeah.
That's the one where you're like, if you're like low on agreeableness, that doesn't necessarily mean you're closed-minded. It just means that you're very like
combative.
You're combative and you want to like debate a point.
Yeah.
A lot.
Yeah.
So I think in today's context, it's like some people want to be challenged mentally and like intellectually, and you want to have invigorating conversations that make you question your own beliefs. That's fun for people. Some other people just want someone who just always agrees with them and like just loves them and has a good time with them, and isn't gonna agree on a point or disagree on a point just to disagree, like because they genuinely disagree. It's like, oh, you care about me, let's just don't disagree. Like a lot of people just prefer that kind of. It's easier for some people.
Yeah.
And some people just don't really care for arguments.
Yeah.
You know, they just rather like be with someone who just is on the same wavelength.
I think a lot of people interpret that, the idea of submissiveness as weak. Like you want a girl that's weak. You want like maybe I don't want to say airhead, but I'm just trying to echo the arguments that I think people are saying, which is you want a girl that's
you want
weak,
a housewife.
You want a housewife. You want, and
Sure.
they put it into this category that makes it sound sexist.
Yes.
Does that make sense?
Yeah, for sure. And I think that's like, I think a lot
Is
of...
it sexist?
To say that...
You want a submissive girl? To say that you want a submissive girl, is that sexist?
It depends on what you mean by submissive.
Yeah.
If you mean that's someone who just does whatever you want, yeah.
Yeah.
I think that's definitely unfair. But like, if you're talking about someone who's more open and agreeable,
yeah,
I don't think that's sexist. I think that's just a personality preference. You might want to have friends who are actually very submissive people as well.
Okay.
You might not want to hang out with people who are just always like wanting to get their point across.
Yeah.
It's interesting though. I feel like with everything in life, I feel like a balance is important.
Mm-hmm.
And so to me, when I'm thinking about what kind of girl that I would want someone who's not like stuck in their ways and like is always 100% trying to prove their point and opposing me. But I also wouldn't want someone who's always agreeing with me, because that would feel weird. I'd want someone who's like able to kind of use their better judgment to be like, this is a good time for us to like have an interesting debate, or it's like, this is not the time for a debate. Let's just like kind of like let bygones be bygones and just like move on together. And I think for me, so I've been watching The Bear, and I'm gonna watch probably an episode later. But so season 3 is really amazing. I watched the first 2 episodes. There's a character who Carmi, who from the main character, meets in season 2, falls in love with this girl. Like they were like kind of like childhood friends a long time ago, and her personality type is exactly what I want. Like she's a nurse, so she's like, you know, obviously smart and capable and like a hard worker and stuff, but she's like, her vibe is very like funny and like just jabbing jokes all the time, but not without being mean. Because here's what I don't like. Turns me off of people, whether friends or romantic interests, when they're always like busting balls, but like in an aggressive, mean way, like shitting on you type of way the whole time. Because that to me, I don't think about relationships the same way I think about friendships. I don't think about romantic relationships the same way I think about friendships. Like if we were busting each other's balls and you were being really mean, it's like I wouldn't feel as upset about it as if I was with a girl and dating her, and like she was really giving me shit about something in a jokey way, but like for an extended period of time. At some point I'd be like, hey, listen, we should have respect for each other here. Like we're partners. You know, we want to have a family together. Like I'd want there to be like a line of like, hey, like we can't like be like shitting on each other all the time, and especially in front of other people. I think that's something that my dad has talked to me about it before. He'll be like at work and someone's like, or he'll be at a family, not a family function, like a work party. Like sometimes they'll have work parties, and he'll be like, there'll be a couple there, and like one couple like looks at the other guy, like their partner, and is like, oh, like fuck you, that's stupid, like what, like jokingly, but it's like crossing a line of like respect that you should have with somebody.
Okay.
Even if no one's offended there, it's almost like there's a line that you shouldn't cross. So anyway, like the character from The Bear, she's like jokey, but in a very lighthearted way, and ultimately very loving and kind. So I think having someone who's loving and kind, but still is able to like be silly and like be clever with you, be smart with you.
Yeah.
Yeah. Like that's what I would be looking for.
I like that sentiment. Yeah. And to take it more to like a little more of a comedic place, sure. I wouldn't want to be with someone. I wouldn't want to be with a heckler at a comedy show that's genuinely offended. Like the one that pops up often for me. I don't even know the name of the comedian. It's this guy. He's sitting at a smaller event, a smaller venue. Thank you. Yeah. He's sitting at a smaller venue, and he's talking about how he's the most. And I'm sure you've seen this video. He's talking about how he's the most anti-Trump comic, and this woman in the crowd is getting upset because he's like talking about black people, and she's like, "Oh, you're a white comic talking to black people. Like you're being super offensive, super racist." And he's going back and forth with her. And eventually it gets to the point where she's so upset that her man is escorting her out of the venue. And he has one last jab. He goes, "Have a good night, Kamala Harris." And everyone's like laughing, and she loses her mind. She starts crying. She's like, "That's the most racist joke ever." And then
yes, I've heard
you've seen it. I know you've seen it. It's like one of the most popular heckler videos out there. So I couldn't be. What's the better scenario? I think the better scenario, maybe you don't feel great about the show, you keep it to yourself. Yeah, talk to your partner after.
I think the best scenario is you get in the car and then maybe she goes like, "Hey, I feel like that was a little bit much. Like, wasn't that?" Yeah. And then you could be like, "Well, listen, I thought it was fine, but I could see maybe I could see how you might take it like that. Yeah. So I'm sorry if you were upset by that.
Yeah.
But it's okay. Like, comedy is comedy. I mean, you might have the perspective that like comedy should be still like not crossing any boundaries, but some people have the opposite perspective. Like comedy should cross boundaries to make people laugh and say ridiculous stuff. Yeah. So I would kind of, if I was the guy in the situation, I would be like, oh, like, don't let it get to you. It's like, I understand, like, it's okay to be upset about it, but the person's goal isn't to upset people, is to just make people laugh. Yeah. And a part of doing that is saying ridiculous stuff. Exactly. So he doesn't mean that. So don't take it to heart type thing. And I think that would be a good way to handle it from the girl's perspective as well, being like, hey, like, did you like questioning as opposed to being like, that was blank. Yeah. Like, to me, it's the arrogance of, especially live in a show, yelling out and being like, hey, I'm telling you what the reality is, which is you're being fucked up. Yeah. It's no shit. Like, I'm a comedian. I'm trying to be messed up.
Yeah. On the point of what comedy is, I think, like, it depends on the kind of comedy you're talking about, but especially stand-up comedy. Yeah. Sorry, there's a hair. There's a hair in my mouth. Yuck. Especially stand-up comedy. I think the name of the game is crossing lines.
Yeah, it's got to be.
And it can't. I don't think it ought. I think it shouldn't be any other way. I think that should be the name of the game.
I think there's different styles. Like Jerry Seinfeld definitely didn't cross any lines with any of his comedy. Yeah. He just kind of made silly observational points. True. Which some people might argue is an inferior form of comedy. Or the other perspective is it's just different, and you might prefer clean comedy. True. So, but I think from my personal taste, like pushing the boundaries and saying stuff that you think that you shouldn't say. Well, so Louis C.K. talks about this all the time, and I love Louis C.K. He has this really funny line, or not funny line, but like a really true and poignant line where he says, like, what he's trying to do is say something that's like, he's not trying to offend people. He's not trying to say something that's really messed up. He's trying to say something that and like hurt you. He's trying to say something that's really messed up and like make you laugh. Like, he's trying to take this horrific subject that no one would ever laugh at, and selling it in such a way that you can't help but laugh. Then he feels like he did what he needed to do. Like, almost in a way, it's almost healing. Like, if, for example, if he makes a joke about like something like really crazy, like traumatic that might happen to somebody, like someone gets assaulted, or someone, he makes a joke about cancer or something horrible. Yeah. And somehow, like, he's so brilliant in his writing that he'll make you laugh about it, even if you had someone who died from cancer in your family. And all of a sudden, it's like the laughter is healing you, and you're almost like, you have levity about the situation, and it's still sad, but you have like, a lighter view of things, or you're kind of like, you're able to not take it so hard. Yeah. So I think ultimately it's necessary. Yeah. Yeah.
The most clear point on the idea of saying things not for the purpose of offending people, not for the purpose of saying something fucked up just to say something fucked up, but to crack jokes, to push those boundaries, and also like not have any intent, like for the sake of argument, racism or like any like sort of like ill intent behind them.
Yeah, people the comedians aren't trying to be racist.
Yeah. The most clear verbalization of that point is by Jimmy Carr. I'm sure you've seen the video.
Yes.
Where he's talking about how people are like heckling him online.
Yeah.
Of like, oh, you should apologize for that joke. And then I think he said
Ricky
something along
Gervais?
Was it Ricky? It was either Ricky Gervais or Jimmy Carr where
he's like, you don't need to follow me.
That was Ricky Gervais.
Yes.
Jimmy Carr, however, I might be saying it wrong. My recollection is he's talking about this topic of conversation, and he's like, okay, let me post a video. So there's people opposing his humor, right?
Yeah. In person?
He says something about posting a video apologizing, but he says it in such a way where it's very clear that he doesn't mean it. And all the comments are calling him out, oh, you didn't mean that apology. And he's taken aback. He goes, oh, wait, so I can say something I don't mean. People can say stuff they don't mean. Like if there's, you know what I'm saying?
Yes. Proved his point that like the initial statement that was offending people was also something he didn't mean.
Exactly. Yeah. So I think that's the clearest verbalization of that, and people
you mind if I go back to a different point?
Go for it. Yeah.
I want to like talk about, if you want to like kind of wrap it up on this. It doesn't matter, but what kind of girl do you think you would want in terms of temperament? Because sometimes I'll think to myself, and because we've talked about like the two extremes.
Yeah. But
then there's also different archetypes. Like for example, to me, I think about, do I want someone who's very extroverted,
okay,
and loud and enthusiastic and bubbly and type A personality?
Yeah. Or
do I want someone who's type B personality, someone who's more shy, more quiet, isn't as like verbose? And I don't know if verbose is the right word. What does verbose mean?
I have no idea, to be quite honest. I'm not even gonna
try to sound
guess.
smart there. No,
verbose.
Like yes, I think you want someone who's type A or type B, someone who's more reserved into themselves. I think in my two relationships that I've had in the past, one's type A, one's type B.
Okay, so you had a direct contrast.
I did have a direct contrast.
Yeah.
And honestly, I don't know which I prefer, to be honest, in terms of personality types. I found that there were big pros in type A and big pros in type B. I feel like with type A, it's kind of like, it's fun to bring them around with people. And you're like, isn't this person great? And they're doing crazy stuff and being silly and whatever.
Yeah.
And the other person is like more reserved, but it's like, oh, this person's so elegant and elegant is the word I think of, and reserved in a positive, like, feminine, beautiful way. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
Like, because a lot of guys would be kind of turned off from someone who's like boisterous and laughing and like being like a guy.
Okay.
It's a stereotypical thing, but like a girl's guy. You never heard that before? Oh, she's a girl's guy. Like Malcolm described one of the girls we met as a girl's guy, being like,
that's a very apt description.
She's a ball breaker, she's a ball buster, whatever. She'll do all this fun stuff and she'll say fun stuff.
Yeah.
Some guys would be like,
a girl guy is fun to be friends with,
but not to be in a relationship with.
I'm not saying that necessarily, but definitely it's true that it's fun to be friends with a girl guy.
Because I think so. But
have I been with a girl guy though? I don't know. I don't know that I have been with a girl guy.
I've been with a girl guy. I think.
Yeah.
I think. Would you?
Yeah.
I think so.
Yeah. Oh yeah.
So
she's a girl guy.
So I think that, and my other ex was not a girl guy at all.
Okay.
But
do you feel it weird? I don't feel weird about this. But because I knew your first ex.
Yeah.
And like I had her phone number, and she's someone who came around.
Yeah.
So she was someone who's in my life.
Yes.
But your second ex was not someone who was in my life.
No. It
was one time where we all hung out because I was seeing someone.
Yes.
And that's the context in which we hung out.
I remember that night.
She never. Yeah. But. Oh.
What?
She never. No. I thought you were. No.
No. I wasn't insinuating anything.
No. Yeah. She never, you never brought her around like you did with your first ex.
And that wasn't
just hanging out.
And that wasn't purposeful. That was, I mean, it was purposeful in the way that
it was the scenario.
The nature of our relationship had to be different. We couldn't be like out all the time. It was like a familial thing.
Yeah, it was a more conservative relationship.
It wasn't
in orientation, I guess.
It wasn't. If we both had it the way we wanted, we both should be around with each other all the time. But it was just like, it's hard to get into.
It was more culturally different.
Yeah, it was like our parents couldn't know about us being together because of our cultural differences.
Yeah.
So, I found that it was very tough. It was very tough for her to even find a time to like be coming out and seeing me.
Yeah.
And oftentimes it had to be under the guise of something else. No, but she's great. I really like both my exes, to be honest. Like, if I wasn't with them and like we hadn't had that history, like I would be happy to be friends with those people.
True.
And I'm still happy to be friendly with them, but obviously it's different. I have a hard time truly believing that I could be like honest friends with somebody, like hang out with them all the time when we had that experience. This is weird, but like when I was watching Seinfeld, I'd always think like, how can Jerry and Elaine like talk about who they're sleeping with each other and not be like weirded out or furious? Or I would feel like weirded out, like I don't want to talk about this with you. This is not something I want to know.
Yeah.
Anyway, that's a side note, but point being that I've been with two different types of people, and like I think that sometimes I preferred the type B. I think that sometimes I preferred the person who was very like, is this bad if I lean forward?
No, I don't think so. You're good.
Like sometimes I preferred having someone who is like, I'm not want to say shy, but like more like slow to speak, thoughtful. Yeah, I felt like there was less potential. I know this sounds bad, and I don't mean it like this, but like in a way, there's less potential to be like embarrassed by them. Do you know what I'm saying? Okay. Like you might be with someone who's like a girl guy and who's like loud and saying dick jokes and maybe taking it a little bit too far with people they just met, for example. Okay. And I'm not even saying this necessarily happened with my first ex, but like there's potential for those scenarios where it's like, oh, haha, she's being funny, huh? And then like in the back of your head, you're like, man, she's being a little bit much. Or maybe my friends are looking at me like, bro, like why is she overstepping so much and making jokes about stuff like we don't even know her. Yeah. Remember that girl you were on the phone with at some point, and I was like, oh yeah. And then remember, with my ex's friend, and she made a joke about you, and then you were like, and then you got frustrated. You're like, I don't know you like that. Like, don't talk to me like that. Yeah, it's
your ex's friend. Yeah. Was joking about like
she made a joke about how
I have a small penis or something,
and she had never met you before. It was her first time speaking with you. And she like went straight to like, oh well, you got a small dick, whatever. And I understood why you were frustrated, and I remember my ex was like confused as to why you were frustrated.
It was said in such a tone though. Like I remember being frustrated. Like that makes me sound insecure, but I remember that not being. It wasn't the content of what she was saying so much. It was partly the content, yes.
She said it in she said it in a bit of an insulting.
But it was also the tone of if it was someone I knew more, that's what it is, right? If it was something, you can use that tone with me and you can say that content. Honestly, the content is secondary. I think
it doesn't matter. You could have said anything but in that way towards you, like the instigating kind. Yeah. But
okay, I still want to talk about a couple more things. I just want to check the lighting.
Anyway, what were we talking about?
So we were talking about your two relationships. So I don't know if there's anything else.
Is this going to be an issue? You think?
I was thinking it might be, but I hadn't.
I'll do it this way.
Look at the frame.
That way, like, you just see my knee.
True. Was there something you wanted to finish on with that?
Not really. I mean, did you want to move on? Because to me, it's like a fascinating topic. Yeah. And I think to myself, like, what's the best person for me? Like, what kind of person is going to make me feel the most fulfilled and happy? Yeah. And honestly, like, I find myself leaning towards type B personality. Okay. And I think in part that's because a lot of people might think that's like a narcissistic thing to want to be the type A in the relationship, but I find that I'm a relatively extroverted person, and I like being like silly and loud and stuff. And I also like, to me, I want in the relationship to have like somewhat of a traditional like protector role or somewhat of a traditional like leader role. Like I don't like the idea of like, oh, there should be no roles ever. Like we're both completely equals. Like, yes, I think we should be 100% equals, but equal but different. Like there should be some things that I'm better at and you're not better, and like naturally there's gonna be those things. Yeah. I wouldn't basically want to be with someone who's a copy of me, who has very similar personality traits to me, because to me that's not complementary. That's just kind of like butting heads sometimes. If you're with someone, if I'm dating someone who's very similar personality to me, then we might like get on each other's nerves or butt heads a lot, and that's what I did find in my first relationship as compared to my second. Oh, here we go. Nice. I found that a lot. I found much more arguments in the first relationship, because in the second relationship, I had a more active, like, for example, like when we were having conversations, I'm a much more talkative person, so I led the dance in terms of conversations, and it was very fun because it wasn't just one way, but I was the one moderating things. Okay. But in the first relationship, it was like we're both trying to be on top in a sense in the conversation. Yeah. So I found that I wasn't as complimented. It felt like someone was pulling against me, whereas in my second relationship, it felt like we were like in a good sync. True. So I do, now that I talk about it, I do feel like I want someone who's more type B personality. Okay. Now, before I ask you what I'm about to ask you, can we just see if we're still recording? If the audio's, we counting up still? I can't see. Yeah, we're at an hour 9 and 26 seconds, 27 seconds. Cool. Okay, so here's my question to you, because you've actually been in the throes of this. Yeah.
and it relates to a struggle of a friend of mine currently. So I'm just going to ask you a blanket question here. Can a Muslim person and a Christian person be together?
Yeah, they can, and I've heard people getting married doing that, and but I think there's like a lot of asterisks. Asterisks is
caveats.
Yeah, there's a lot of caveats where, there's the dynamic of the families. That's one dynamic. The second dynamic is you guys personally, and then the third dynamic is like your potential future family. You're the family that you're gonna create.
Yeah.
So on one hand, it's like, let's say you don't care. Let's say no matter what, the families are going to be upset, especially with Christian and Muslims. Like, they're very strict generally, especially like a lot of people are traditionally Muslim. They're very like by the book.
Yeah.
Orthodox Christians, they're very by the book, which is what we are. So with families, there's always going to be problems. So let's say you don't care about the families and you're like, you know what, we love each other and we don't care how our family takes it. We're doing it no matter how badly it strains our family relationships. So you check that box off. The next box is there going to be any potential problems between each other? And that's where things get really tricky, where let's say one person is very devout and the other person is not, or they're both devout, you're going to have problems. Because if one person's devout, one person is not devout, the person who's not devout is not going to be as interested, and they're not going to participate as much. There's going to be conversations of, oh, like even if you have kids, this is the third point, the third box, like, oh, why is dad not doing this with us? Why is dad not doing that with us, or whatever? To me, the only scenario in which it works out is if both people aren't very religious, they're both pretty like agnostic, or they're just culturally religious and they don't care that much. If it's that, and you're willing to potentially break things with your parents and have things be horrible with them, like a shaky relationship, then you can work it out.
True.
For me, I was in a situation where I wasn't really okay with either. I think I tried to convince myself that I was okay with the former, of like maybe my parents would forgive me, it'll be fine. But then I thought, like, even though I'm not a super, super religious person, she's very devout, and she plans on being that way, and she plans on raising the kids that way in her faith. That's not my faith. So even though I'm not, again, devout, I would feel uncomfortable with my kids being raised one way that I don't believe in or know anything about.
Yeah.
So blanket question, like, the answer is it depends.
Yeah.
And I think that, again, the only situation that is pretty decent is if you both are fine with, like, kind of moving away and leaving your family, and you're both like you're both equally as not invested in your own respective religions. I think. Can
we talk about something? We're gonna come back to this in just a second.
Yeah.
But I want to talk to you about something that happened between you and I.
Sure.
I don't even know if this was as big a thing to you. But when you were in your relationship with this other person,
second,
who was Muslim, the second. You gave me a phone call, and you were talking to me about how you were at a point where, like you said, you were contemplating going through with it, even if it fractured your relationship with your parents.
I was in my room. I remember that.
Do you remember this phone call?
Yeah, I remember that.
Now, I want to know your perception of that phone call, because while you were saying that, I was trying to be, like, not telling you what to do, but also not agreeing with you. You know what I'm saying? Yeah. Do you remember that? How was your perception of that phone call?
My perception of the phone call is that I was, like, really nervous about the idea of leaving my family and straining the relationship, and then her having her family relationship ruined as well and stuff. Yeah. I remember feeling kind of nervous, but at the moment I was so in love and committed to her that I was like, you know what? I was passionate, like, you know what? Even though I am nervous, like, I shouldn't let other people dictate what's going to make me happy and what's going to happen in my life. Yeah. And in a way, I still agree with that perspective.
Yes.
But I think that ultimately when I thought about the potential problems between her and I, and between our kids and stuff in the future, and I combined it with the family thing, like, everything was adding up, and I was like, everything is pointing me towards that this is not a good idea.
Yeah.
And also, like, now that I'm out of it, and I'm out of the kind of trance of being in love with someone in the honeymoon phase and whatever, now that I'm out of it, I feel glad that I didn't, really harm things with my family, because I care about my family, and they're there to support me and be there for me, and vice versa. Yeah. So, but in terms of how I perceived you, do you want to talk about that, or do you want to jump in first?
Well, I want to say, so while we were having that conversation, I was really getting that strong sense of what you just described, where you're like, yeah, like this is what I want to do.
Confidence.
Sorry?
Confidence. Like I was confident.
Confident in the idea, exactly.
Yeah.
And so I was in a position where I was not agreeing with you, but I also wasn't trying to be strongly opposing you because of how you positioned yourself on it.
I perceived it as a...
And I hope you don't get upset in me saying this, but like I was a little like worried. You know what I'm saying? Like I was thinking like, do I need to have like, you know, another talk with you and like maybe like try again with you and like, and if, you know, you go with it, you go with it. But like, do I have a responsibility to bring this to your attention for more of a deeper thought?
Yeah, yeah.
You know what I'm saying? You know what I'm trying to say?
No, that's completely fair. I mean, if you were truly worried and you know, you thought I was going to go through with something that was going to harm my life for the long run, I definitely would like you to talk to me about it.
Yeah, yeah.
Even if it's a hard conversation to have, like, it's easier said than done. Like I could say this now, and then maybe if you bring it up to me, I'd be really like frustrated and upset and not sure how to deal with it.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
But that being said, like,
someone said it to me pretty convincingly, because I had this conversation with a different group of friends.
Yeah, about different religions being together.
Not about different religions, about the idea of bringing stuff up to your friends,
even if it may harm them,
even if they may be upset with you or whatever.
Yeah,
they said to me, if this is someone who's like close to you, they will get upset in the moment, or they may. Likely they'll get upset in the moment if it's something they don't want to hear. But it should be a thing of, it should be the case that they reflect maybe after the conversation, and there's a round two, where if it doesn't go well, there'll be a round two of like, hey, I understand where you're coming from, and there's a proper resolution to it.
Sure.
You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
So the idea of a bad reaction shouldn't deter you. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah, yeah.
Necessarily.
Sure. Yeah. That's
Depends
normal.
on how they conduct themselves, obviously.
Sure. But most people, you would say, like, again, the argument is like that it's a very natural reaction to be frustrated or upset.
Exactly.
No matter how close you are with the person, it's a jarring thing to hear.
Exactly.
And we've been in a similar situation as well.
Exactly.
Like, so, but in terms of how I perceived you, I kind of perceived you as...
because part of me, before you jump in, part of me, after hanging up with you, felt like you were frustrated with me. I don't know if I'm right. You were frustrated with me. Yeah.
I don't remember that at all.
Okay.
My perception was that you were like kind of neutral. That's how I felt. That's how I remember it. I remember it where you were being like, you were like trying to play devil's advocate to make sure I'm considering both perspectives.
Okay.
Like,
but then I also backed off as well, kind of thing, right? Of like, I didn't try to make a point of like, you shouldn't do this.
Yeah.
I was just like, you're right. I was in the middle of it.
Yeah, you were pretty neutral, and I think that I was very passionate at the time.
Yeah.
So when I was talking to you, I never felt like I was frustrated with you. I just felt like I was very sure of myself. And you told me to consider the alternative and whatever. Okay. And I was like, like I have, but like I think I'm pretty sure on this.
Yeah.
But so I don't remember hanging up and being like, man, you really was pushing. Like I didn't feel that at all. I felt like you were just there to listen as opposed to telling me what to do. Okay. So I don't have any problems with the way you were doing it. Yeah.
Wow, it's crazy how we have two very different recollections of that.
I didn't really think much of it after that at all.
Yeah, it's something that's been on my mind. Like it's not something I constantly think about, but here and there, like I think about that conversation and like the events to follow.
Yes, and I don't really know what that was, to be honest. Like you heard how confident and sure of myself I was. Yeah. And like over time, like doubt started to creep in, and I started to reflect more and more and more, and so I came to the conclusion by myself. But yeah, I mean, maybe if I didn't come to that conclusion by myself, you would have another talk with me. Yeah. And I wouldn't be opposed to that. I'm always open to having conversation. Yeah. And I think we should all be always open to having conversation, because
that's right.
Maybe you're so deep in something you're like, you have the blinders on. Yeah. You need someone to like from the outside to be like, hey, dude, like you're not seeing things properly potentially, or or even not even accused like that, like, oh, you're not seeing it, but just like ask questions. Sometimes when you ask questions and you talk. Let's say like even a minute ago when I was talking about like type A, type B, or like 10 minutes ago, whenever it was, and I started the statement by saying I'm not sure which type I'd want, and the more I thought about it, and you asked me questions and we talked back and forth, and I started talking out loud, I realized what my answer was. Yeah. So I think it's the same thing here of like, even if you have this conversation with me about you're worried about me and whatever, I think that sometimes it's best to just open the dialogue, not to be like aggressive or whatever, but just have the dialogue open so that the fucking neurons can get going, and you
Yeah.
can start making connections and ask questions and stuff.
Yeah, I agree.
Yeah.
So back to the point, or back to the topic, can
Yes.
Muslims and Christians be together?
Yeah. No, but as someone who's been through the same thing, I'm telling you, like, there is no plan. Like,
Yeah.
there literally isn't a plan. You start kind of half-assing a plan on the way there.
Yeah.
But the whole thing is, you meet someone and you genuinely fall in love with them, and I don't know, you just like your chemistry is great, and you're around each other all the time.
Yeah.
And you want to hang out with them all the time. You want to talk to them all the time. So you do talk to them all the time. You might go through a phase where you're not actually dating, but you're talking every night, and you're being kind of flirtatious. And then it evolves to a stage of, you're talking every night, and you're being kind of overtly cute with each other and shit.
Yeah.
And then you one day have the conversation of, should we date? Is this a bad idea? And because you're young and you're in love, like, you choose to be happy. And then you choose to start dating, and then usually around like the 1 year mark or a couple of years or whatever it is, then you start being like, what's the end goal here?
Yeah.
Some people have the conversation sooner than others. For me, it was like about like the 8 or 9 month mark, where I was like, what's the deal here?
Yeah.
I think it's definitely valuable to talk to people who've had similar experiences, because then I could describe it the way I've described it, or even if you want to relay it, you can as well.
Yeah.
Of like, should they still stay together? Well, it depends on, again, like how their families would feel about it. Is it going to destroy their family relationships? In most cases, it will, because people are very strict about that sort of stuff. And at the very least, it would significantly strain it, and you wouldn't be as close anymore. And that's a deal breaker for a lot of people.
Yeah.
And secondly, is there going to be potential issues between you two? Like, you have to decide, like, if you're willing to let go of families, really. Like, if you're willing to, like, cut ties largely. Because also, like, a big thing for families is, how are you going to raise our grandkids, right? Like, my parents would be like, what, you're raising our grandkids Muslim? Like, are you crazy? Like, you're not our son anymore. Like, this is breaking you're destroying the family tree, essentially. Like, the whole lineage is done. Our faith is gone forever.
Mm-hmm. It's just because for a lot of, especially for Egyptians, faith is so intertwined with identity. Yeah. Even look at us. Like, we've got crosses tatted on our bodies, kind of thing. It's just so, like, I think about it with my own life, and just like being raised in the church and wanting to have that for my kids too, because I really did enjoy growing up in the church. It's such a beautiful community. I think we have, it's caring, and you know what I'm saying? Yeah, for sure. And that's another thing. And that's what it is. It's just so entrenched in our identity that's why they feel that way, and it's understandable that they feel that way. I don't know if you would feel that way for your kids if they wanted to be with someone Muslim. I don't think you would. That I'd feel like they can't. That they can't, right?
Yeah, I don't know. Like, it's a tough conversation, because, again, for me, I describe myself as someone who's not like super, super devout and strict. Yeah. But I still I value my faith a lot, and I still like appreciate everything the church and the community has done for me. And I still like going back to mass, and I like being connected. I like talking to people from there, and I like the way it looks, and I like the way it smells, I like the way it feels. So I just like being there. Yeah, me too. Like, even though I'm not religious that way, when I was talking with my ex about being together and whatever, it did make me feel a little sad when I was like, oh, well, I can't do any of that stuff with my kids, and they have to do something I don't know anything about. So I think even if I had kids and they wanted to be with someone who's not Christian, like, I think I would be likely more laxed on it than my parents are. But it would still make you think. But it would still make me think, and I would still make sure that they thought it thoroughly, just like I did. Yeah. Because like, let's say my kids are in the same exact situation that I was in. Yeah. And they reflect and they come to the same conclusion. Fine. If they come to a different conclusion, the difference between my parents' generation and my generation is that I'm not going to cut ties with them. Yeah. I'd be completely happy that they found someone that they loved, and if they're not going to carry the tradition, it's not going to be the be all end all for me. I see. Whereas for our parents' generation, like that's like horrible. That's like unthinkable. Yeah. Whereas for me, like, I want my child to put their happiness first and foremost, but also think everything through. Because if the way that I raise them, like, I do want to bring them to church and stuff like that. So if they're gonna be in the same boat that I was in, I'm gonna assume they're probably gonna reach the same conclusion that I am. That's the thing. If that's the other side of it too. I'm getting bit in the balls right now. We'll end in just a second here, but that's the thing. You're right. Where it's, if they do like their upbringing and if you raise them to love their culture, then it's unlikely that they would want to turn away from that and risk being in a situation where they might have to give that up. But beyond that, let's say I don't raise them religious at all, for example. Yeah. which I'm not planning on doing, but like let's say I don't give them any structure, that like religious structure,
Yeah.
and I raise them very secular and logical and but like compassionate, and they, you know, whatever, because I feel like I'm very like I have a Western way of thinking sometimes.
Yeah.
And again, a part of the reason why I didn't go through I didn't continue with the person that I was with, is because I logically thought about how I would feel if my spouse raised our kids in a different faith and whatever. And I think that even if my kids aren't very religious, they would feel the same kind of like, oh, do I want to be with someone who's going to raise the kids in a different religion? I don't know the religion. I don't care about it. And there's a disconnect there and potential arguments, and we have to do these things that I don't know about. Like, simply, regardless of what your religion is, being with someone who's doing their own thing with their own religion, and the kids and them are on their own corner and you're in your own corner.
This is true.
It feels alienating regardless of where you stand religiously.
This is true.
So yes, with the thing of like, oh, if you raise them in the way you were raised, they're probably not going to want to do it anyway, which was a part of it for me. But another part of it was for me was that like I don't want to feel that disconnect. I don't want to be with someone who like I wouldn't feel comfortable with it. It would just feel strange and I wouldn't like it. So yeah, I don't know. I wouldn't mind having that conversation with him. Let me know if he does want to talk. Or at the very least, he could watch this, or you know, he can
not
relay.
that he does. I don't think he watches our.
Yeah.
You piece of shit. You don't watch our. You don't watch our show. Anyways, yeah, I think this is a good place to end it off.
Sure.
Thank you guys for tuning in. We're gonna call this episode something special. Matt and his dad is old and gold. We're too like. Should it be something like Egyptian wise? I don't know, Matt. Think about it. Give us a themed name.
The Pharaoh brothers or something.
The Pharaoh, something like that. Maybe we do more duo episodes moving forward, and we can have that name consistently. But yeah, thanks for tuning in, guys. Hope you guys enjoyed the conversation. Like, share, follow, subscribe. This has been the show about everything, anything, and usually nothing. Good night.
See ya.